Every country in the world is in debt. Among them, the United States today has a debt exceeding $38 trillion, reaching the highest level in its history. The European Union carries around $14 trillion, and Japan nearly $9 trillion in debt. Oil-rich countries, export giants, even they are in debt. At first, a simple question comes to mind. If everyone is in debt, who is actually receiving this money? This is where the direction of the story changes. What we see as debt is not just an accounting entry. It actually forms the basic skeleton of the modern world. Wars, crises, economic booms, collapses, all of them stand on top of an invisible network of debt. As we follow this network, an interesting truth emerges. The world is not specifically indebted to anyone. Everyone is indebted to themselves. But this does not mean the system operates under equal conditions for everyone. To understand today's picture, we need to go far back, long before credit cards and mobile banking. The origin story of debt begins on the battlefield. In 1694, England was at war with France, and the treasury was empty. The king turned to merchants and said, "Give me money now, and I will repay you in the future through taxes." With this simple yet solution-oriented idea, the Bank of England was established. This was a revolutionary step. For the first time, the state began spending money it had not yet earned. In return, merchants received something unique: the promise of the state. This promise could be bought, sold, and transferred. With this development, the government bond was born. The seed of the modern financial system was planted. This system spread rapidly. France adopted it. The Netherlands advanced it. The United States financed its independence and expansion through this model. National debt was no longer a sign of weakness, but a symbol of credibility. If you could borrow, you were taken seriously. In the past, empires conquered land to acquire gold. Today, they issue bonds to earn interest. The nature of war has changed. No longer swords and shields, but balance sheets do the fighting. Today, debt has become almost a common denominator of the world. Every country has debt. Every bank has many creditors, and every citizen, through taxes and various funds, is simultaneously both a debtor and a creditor. So, who do we actually owe? Let's look at the financial situation of the United States. A large portion of U.S. debt is not owed to foreign countries, but to its own system. American banks, pension funds, insurance companies, and even the central bank itself are creditors. Yes, there is foreign debt, but not as much as commonly believed. For example, there is debt owed to China, but it represents only a small fraction of the total. In other words, America borrows, Americans buy the debt, and Americans earn the interest. Interest is paid through taxes, and that interest flows back into American retirement accounts. It is, in effect, a self-contained borrowing cycle. This is not unique to the United States. Japan lends to the U.S. The U.S. lends to other countries through the IMF. Developing nations invest the foreign currency they earn back into Western bonds. Everyone holds someone else's paper. It is like a game table where everyone's chips come from the next player. As long as everyone agrees to play, the system continues. There are other instruments that shape the system, and the most decisive among them are the markets. A vast network of major funds, central banks, and investors determines who can borrow at what cost and who gets cornered. Once confidence disappears, currencies collapse, governments fall, and economies are rapidly restructured. Central banks form the lifeline of this system. They do not only manage debt, they buy bonds and create money in return. That means every unit of money in circulation is a reflection of debt somewhere else. In short, there is no such thing as debt-free money. This system has survived for years on confidence. Governments are trusted not because they will repay the principal, but because they can keep servicing the interest. When confidence breaks, this is what happens. What we saw in Greece, Argentina, and Sri Lanka was precisely the collapse of trust. Austerity policies, mass unemployment, fuel shortages, and political breakdown followed. And here is the striking part. Governments do not actually aim to pay off their debts. Instead, they manage the system by replacing old debts with new ones. This is not a secret, it is openly how the system works. Old debts are paid with new debts. What truly matters is that the interest wheel keeps turning. America will never fully pay off its debt. Japan has been doing this for years because these debts are not a burden that clogs the system. They are its foundation. Banks use these bonds as safe assets. Pension funds survive on them. If the debt disappears, the system collapses. That is why promises like, "we will eliminate the debt," are usually an illusion. The real objective is not to erase debt, but to keep it portable and manageable. But one detail must not be forgotten. Saying we owe it to ourselves does not mean the same thing for everyone. Interest income flows upward. The burden of debt flows downward. For this reason, the debt system is also a mechanism of wealth transfer. So the problem is not debt alone. The problem is who the debt works for. And in the end, we face this reality. There is no single enemy to blame in this system. We built it together, and we continue it together. Debt is no longer a chain, but a balancing tool. Yet if that balance breaks, if confidence disappears, the story ends, and we remember what debt truly is, a promise that must be kept, but can never be kept forever.